Oh, tier list. This is going to be my tier list of everything that I have watched over this past summer. Let's just get into this because I've watched, what is it, like 14 films on this? 1, 2, 3, 21, 22, 23. I've watched 23 of these films. So it's a fairly extensive list that I would like to get through quite quickly. So let's just jump straight into this. First up, we have Thunderbolts, which was heralded as essentially the return of Marvel to this new style of filmmaking that they purported to want to pursue. And that is Thunderbolts, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Sebastian Stan, and a whole crew of other actors. So more than most people, I think I found this film quite underwhelming. I think that the sort of bland mental health message that it puts across is very one note. I think it's quite just sort of across the board. It doesn't really touch on anything specific. It doesn't touch on any specific traits. It doesn't go, well, we're actually talking about depression or anxiety or bipolar. And I know that what I believe it's meant to actually be is bipolar disorder, but it never really mentions this by name. It never has what I would describe as overt references to that disorder. And on top of this, I didn't really find a lot of the relationships very convincing, nor do I think that many of the jokes were very funny. And the jokes are like a typical Marvel sort of comedy thing where it's like it's every minute, it's every 2 minutes. And because of this, I found the mental health message quite underwhelming. You're telling me this is a more serious film. You're telling me that this is a film with a mental health message, and yet you're constantly undercutting yourself with these jokes that I just don't really think are very funny. On the other hand, the film isn't necessarily overtly bad. I just don't think there's anything very great about it. It looks fine, the performances are fine, and across the board, I just don't think it's a very offensive film. It's not particularly great, it's not particularly bad, and it just for me falls into this sort of C category where I don't really think I'm gonna ever visit again. Maybe I'll watch it once again at the end of the year to decide whether or not I think I'm wrong or whether I was bang on. But it's just not something that I got very much out of personally. Next up on the list, though, is a film that I got a lot out of, which is Friendship. This is the Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd film. This film focuses on the idea that male friendship is very hard to encounter and it's very hard to maintain. And it was a film that is in many ways pointed at the sort of male loneliness epidemic. And it's not one that, maybe contradictory to what I've just said about Thunderbolts, it's not very pointed, but it's very clear in what it's talking about. If you know what this film is going into it, you can kind of take this as a commentary of the spheres online, the manosphere, the alpha male thing, all that sort of stuff. It never overtly references it, but in my opinion, it kind of serves as this perfect antidote to that. I actually don't think the film is too funny. I know that a lot of people out there would disagree with me, but I almost view this film as a sort of straight drama with comedic elements. And it's on occasion very funny, and I think other people would probably find it even more funny than me. But to me, it's serious elements that are underneath it that I found more alluring and more sort of enthralling. I think that this film is a classic example of that sphere that A24 has picked into, of going, well, this is a topic that the mainstream isn't necessarily covering. So what if we give 10 million to a director and say, go work away and make this film? And this film feels pointed. It feels like a film that 10 years ago it just would not have been made at all because it would have been too controversial. It would have been picked up in the mainstream media and it would have been made into a bigger thing than it actually is. But in this sphere, in 2025, it is one that it can find an audience. It doesn't necessarily need to appeal to £100 million or dollars worth of audiences. It can make 40 million and it can be successful. Now, this film will probably just sort of go on Netflix and just sort of weasel away. But to me, this is very worthwhile. It, in my opinion, is one of the best comedies of the year. And as we'll go further down this list, I think there is better out there. But I really, really had fun with this. I think it's a great sort of character study of what it means to be a lonely middle-aged man. And it's one that if you watch it and you're my age, it kind of forces you to go out there and be more sociable because you don't want to end up like one of these characters. So for me, I would put this firmly in that A category. It's funny, it has serious moments, it's got great characters, great performances. Across the board, this was a very fun film for me to watch. I think that possibly the ending was a bit disappointing for me. I'm not really a fan of that. Then we have the Legacy sequel, let's call it Final Destination Bloodlines. The Legacy sequel market, I would say, is starting to dry up now. We're sort of, after Final Destination Bloodlines, we're kind of heading for sort of barren territory. But this is one of those ones that is very good. It recognizes what it is. It's not trying to outstay its welcome. And in my opinion, it's a great film overall. I'm not really a Final Destination fan. I believe I've seen bits of one or two of them, but don't think I've seen a full film. But this one, for me, is one that perfectly accepts that it's a B movie and it accepts its role in that. It's not trying to be high art. It's not trying to be high art horror. It's not going for anything like that. It knows what it's here for. It's here for a 90-minute thrill ride. Give us some fun kills and get the fuck out. And it's really great. It has a great final performance from Tony Todd. I love that he was in here, even as someone that isn't a fan of these films. It still works very well. It still feels like, if you don't know that he was dying of cancer, it still is one of those things that you can watch and go, Jesus, this is poignant. What happened to this guy? I need to go and find out. It works very well. The characters are, somewhat hit and miss, I would say. Some of them you're probably going to just find annoying. Some of them you think are probably going to be great. But that's part and parcel of a Legacy sequel. That's part and parcel of this B horror movie. So this is one that I had a great time with. There's definitely better horror movies out there this summer and definitely better horror movies out there this year. But it's not going for that, in my opinion. It's going for that late 90s, early 2000s feel that these kind of movies had. And I am all for it. I don't want these movies constantly, but if there's one a year, if there's this movie this year, Scream next year, and then something else in 2027, I can really get behind that. One movie of these a year, that's great. I'm fine with that. Hurry Up Tomorrow. Now this, one of the worst fucking movies of this year. Trey Edward Schultz directed this film. It stars Jenna Ortega, Barry Keoghan, and The Weeknd. Abel Tesfaye. Now, Abel Tesfaye, off the bat, terrible actor, terrible writer. Shouldn't be allowed to put his pen anywhere near anything. Shouldn't be allowed to act. If he's going to act, he shouldn't be writing. If he's going to write, he shouldn't be acting, because he can't fucking do both of them at the same time. That's obvious. Let's put him away, put him in a box, put him in a music box, give him a piano and lock him in a fucking room, because he can't be doing this shit. This is terrible. Jenna Ortega, what's going on with her career? I'm worried that she's kind of fucked. She might be done. And she's going to have to overcome some massive barrier of just being wormed away into this specific emo goth character vibe that worked when she was 18, 19, 20. You're 24. You're 23. You're the same age as me, pretty much. Figure this shit out, because I don't want to see these films anymore. This is boring. It's dull. Barry Keoghan, same boat, where everything that he's done since The Batman and whatever else he's been in, The Banshees of Inisherin and that sort of stuff, since he's moved past that era, it's just been shit. Like, I don't know what he's going for. This party boy vibe that apparently broke him up from Sabrina Carpenter is kind of just what he's doing in this film, and it's not very convincing. He's probably is the best character in the film because he knows what he's doing. He knows what film this is. He understands that this isn't as serious as everyone else thinks it is. He's kind of just taking the piss, which makes fun of him, and it's not very fun to watch, I would say. But you can at least look at it and go like, okay, well, at least you understood that this film was terrible, but it looks terrible. It doesn't make any sense plot-wise. The characters are terrible. Acting-wise, it's terrible. Directed terribly. And I will say that I think Waves is a brilliant masterpiece. So for him to return with this is majorly disappointing to me. This should almost go in the NA category with everything else that I haven't watched, but let's not disrespect any of these films, because I think there's some okay films in here. Let's put it in just E, because this is fucking terrible. This is not worth watching. Do not watch this. Then what is purportedly the final Mission Impossible film, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. This is the sequel to Dead Reckoning, the part one that was then retitled to Final Reckoning, as they essentially built to the idea that this was the final film in the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible arc. Now, whether or not he is going to be replaced, whether or not he's going to come back, whether it's just dead overall, that remains to be seen. I, after this film, don't want another one, really. In my review, when this came out, I was actually more positive, I think, than most people. And that is because I think that the film is a lot of fun. If you go back and watch Mission Impossible Rogue Nation or Syndicate or, the third one or the first one, there's more than just this is a fun film. In some ways, it has lamentations on society, friendship, teamwork, all these sort of things. This is essentially just built around the two action pieces and some fun guest performances. But other than that, there's just not very much going on here that I found particularly memorable. After about 2 weeks, I remember looking back on this film and going, what do I actually remember from this film? And to be honest, it's not very much. I don't really remember Tom Cruise very much in this film. He just sort of is there as a placeholder almost. He's very fun in the action set pieces, and I think it's very impressive what he's doing in those. But there's not much else, and I found the ending to just kind of be annoying. The fact that pretty much everyone makes it out. That's a spoiler, I know, but it's been months now. I just found to be very disappointing and flat, because you're pitching this as the final reckoning. You're pitching this as the culmination of the entire series. That's fine. But then make it that and have some risk. And instead, the film has none of it. It's just a bit bland and it's just a bit forgettable. But it's not bad. There are fun moments in it. It looks very impressive. And there's some interesting or at least fun acting performances. And there's some returns here that, as a long time fan of this franchise, I found very satisfactory. I feel like I should put it in C, but I want to put it in B. So for now, I'll put it in B. But based on what else goes in here, we'll see. And then we have what is one of my favorite films of the year, which is Bring Her Back. But this film with Sally Hawkins in the main role as a grieving parent who is attempting to resurrect her through some sort of cult ritual is one of the most disturbing films I think I've ever watched, both physically and mentally. It's not just the physical things that you're seeing the characters be put through. Psychologically, what is happening is very fucked up, and I don't want to rewatch this film. But given that it's the Philippou brothers, I almost definitely will, because I love them. I think that some of the elements, particularly the sort of snuff film angle of it, is there to almost make the film feel more raw, and I don't think it's necessary. I would actually just be interested in seeing a full snuff film made by the duo, but instead, what we get is something that is, in turns, it can be kind of raw, and in some turns, it can kind of be more deep and art house, and it feels like an A24 production. And I don't know if both of those elements work. I wouldn't be surprised if the next film is this sort of raw snuff film that I'm talking about that feels more European, continental European in nature. But those elements here don't work very well. But Sally Hawkins is excellent. All of the child performances in this film are excellent. I would say Sarah Song, doing what she does in this film as a blind actor is very difficult because she can't use her face to emote in the same way. But she uses her mouth and she uses her words and her voice in a way that is very effective, and it makes you very emotional. This is one of the most effective films I think I've ever seen, but it's not a very enjoyable film. It's not entertaining, but that is kind of what A24 is going for in a lot of their horror movies. I think that this is probably going in the A category for me. It's not one of the best of the year. It's probably not going to end up in my top 5. But it is fucking stupendous. It does affect you. It is visceral. It is emotional. It is upsetting. It is everything that it is going for. It could be cleaned up in terms of some of the things that it is including and it is using to send its message. Karate Kid Legends, I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is another one that is just terrible. It's one of the worst films of the year. It was massively disappointing because I felt like we were kind of ready for this sort of teenager / child karate film / martial arts film, it's an area that I think is ripe for these films, and it just doesn't do the genre any justice whatsoever. Over the past 5-10 years, we've had the John Wick films, we've had these raid films, all of these kind of films, but we've not had anything like a Karate Kid. We've not had Karate Kid or otherwise to fill this space that is more geared towards a child audience. And it's very disappointing because I think it's a genre that is very fun. It has some sort of heart to it, and it's one that you can really find child actors in that are good at this sort of genre work of they're good at action, and you can sort of feed them into that pipeline of being adult action stars. And it just doesn't exist in Karate Kid Legends. The most appealing thing is the style, which it doesn't have for about an hour of it. This film, I should also mention, is about an hour and a half, which is mind-boggling for a karate film, because I feel like you should have it in stages of, you have the terrible section at the start where he's very bad at everything. You have the middle section where he's okay, and then you have the end where it's like, oh, he's brilliant, but he's still overcoming that object, which Daniel LaRusso does in the original film. He overcomes that injury to win the tournament against all odds. There isn't anything of that, I don't feel, in this film. It is just simply a cash in, and given the fact that I thought that this film was going to be good, I felt very disappointed and just quite upset by it. It's disappointing, and I don't find very much fun about it at all. It's not appealing to kids, it's not appealing to adults, it's only appealing to people that like the original Karate Kid films and people that like martial arts films, and that's not a winning formula for this genre that has been dormant essentially for about 30 years. So, just disappointing, one of the worst films of the year in my opinion, and a cash grab across the board. Next on the list, we have Wes Anderson's The Phoenician Scheme, starring Mia Threppleton and Benicio del Toro. This film, I thought, was quite a lot of fun, but I think it loses in the middle what it has at the start and what it has at the end, which is this familial feel, which only really exists when Del Toro and Threppleton are in the home with all of their siblings / sons, I guess. And in the middle section, I still found it to be quite fun, but I don't think it's as funny as it ever is at that start of the film. And I think there's very fun performances here, but I think the central three performances of those two plus Michael Cera is the most important and the funniest parts. And yet Wes Anderson does what Wes Anderson does, and he feels intent on including this ensemble cast I just wasn't very interested in. And I still think it's a very good film. I don't think it's any worse than Final Destination or Mission Impossible Bloodlines. If anything, I think it probably is in the middle of those two. I think it's probably better than Mission Impossible, but I don't think it's better than Final Destination. But this is one that I think is more in line with what I want from Wes Anderson than Asteroid City. This is closer to the Grand Budapest Hotel than Asteroid City was, but it doesn't work as effectively because I don't think that the lead performances are as charming. It also doesn't spend enough time with just those lead performances to really sell me on their relationship and to really make me feel like I care about them on a deep level. Overall, I really like The Phoenician Scheme. I want to see it again, and I want to really fulfill this trilogy of ideas that he has going on. Next, we have Ballerina. Wasn't really disappointed by this film because I'm not sure I expected very much from it. But I think it is probably one that probably kills off, or at least hinders in a major way, the John Wick franchise. I think that Ana de Armas probably sells me quite a lot on her ability to be a action hero. I think the grenade scene in the shop is very good. I think the axe scene is very good. And I think the flamethrower scene is very good, all led by her. But there isn't enough here for me to really say I had a great time. I had fun with those scenes, but it sort of falls into the Mission Impossible category, except for the fact that there isn't other fun guest characters in this film where I can really rest my hat on. I can allow Ana de Armas to take a back seat and go, oh, I'm having fun with this character now. When Tom Cruise isn't firing on all cylinders, Anna Waddingham is there, Terrell Tillman is there are others as well. In this film, there isn't any of that, and it relies on Ana de Armas a lot to sell it, and then it brings in John Wick, And the Reeves scenes, the Keanu Reeves scenes, just don't work very well at all for me. They feel shoehorned in, and you can tell that it's been sort of cut in later through reshoots. So for the sake of Ana de Armas being good in the film and being enjoyable, I will give this a D, but I don't think there is anything pretty much redeemable other than her. I want to see more of what she can do if she chooses to go out of her way to pursue these kinds of roles, but in better films. It will be hard for her to sell them because I think she struggles to sell some of the one-liners in this film, but that is probably more due to the fact that English isn't her first language. So you have to find a workaround for that. If you can't sell her with the one-liners, how do you make her cool? And that's what this film never figures out. It just sort of puts her in the role of just being the female John Wick, which in a way I think is kind of sexist, to be honest with you. Predator, killer of killers. And this is going straight in A. This is a film that, again, I think just understands it. It's not trying to be the headline Predator film, which is why it's gone straight to Disney+. It is an animated film about this contest that the Predator has where they go to other planets, they find the warrior or the killer of killers, let's say, and attempts to kill them. When that doesn't work, they bring them to this arena and have the three that survive face off: a Viking, a samurai, and a US Army veteran. I think this film works exceptionally well because it just sort of accepts its lane. The reason I would put it higher than Final Destination Bloodlines for me is because it's given me such high hopes for what Predator Badlands is going to be. Now, I have full faith, I have to say, in Dan Trachtenberg, because what he's done so far with this Predator franchise, with this and with Prey, really sells me on his belief and his, sort of fandom with the franchise. It is a limited film. I just think that it is also very effective at making me want to go and see the new Predator film. And that's what, in my opinion, streaming services such as Disney Plus should be, delivering A-tier films straight to the service and then going, by the way, this is just a taste of what else we have in store. But those films, you're going to have to go out and buy a film ticket, buy a cinema ticket. There's not enough of that, in my opinion, because it requires risk. Yes, Predator exists as a long-standing franchise, but it's not one that necessarily is blowing the doors off with every release. It's not necessarily one that I would consider an S-tier franchise, but it is one that I think you can build back into something bigger than it is currently. Whatever Dan Trachtenberg is cooking with this new film, I'm all here for it. And this, I have to be honest, Predator isn't a film that I've even seen. I think I've seen The Predator, I've seen Prey, I've seen this, and then I love the Alien films. But I've never seen Alien vs. Predator. But what he's working with and what he's doing currently, this guy, he knows what he's doing. It's very impressive. So I can't wait to see what he's doing. I don't think necessarily that film will be S tier because I think it's very difficult for a lot of horror films to be S tier. We'll see later on in this list whether or not any of the horror films are S tier for me. He understands this franchise and he has a very clear vision in a way that I don't think any other franchise does. Or let's say legacy franchise does. Fede Alvarez and Ridley Scott, who served as director and producer respectively on Alien Romulus, love the franchise, but I'm not sure they have a 10-year plan. I think they just make movies going, oh, this will be a cool idea. Both are necessary and both have a place. But I think Dan Trachtenberg's version of it is more visionary and is more highbrow, let's say. And in my opinion, is more impressive to essentially dedicate yourself to this franchise and just go, I'm going to do nothing else but this. And I'm going to make it work. Very impressive to me. And I can't wait to see what else he's got going on. We come to a film that I fucking hated. How to Train Your Dragon. This film is terrible and is only really good because of the script that came before it. Now, I don't know where to fucking put it because it literally copies verbatim the original animated film script, other than one or two inclusions where I actually think that this film is trying to make a message about Palestine. Now, that's fine, but I'm not really sure that this is the film where that's necessary. In a film about a guy or a kid that doesn't like killing dragons, so he's trying to tame it. Is this really the space for that? Do I need this in my How to Train Your Dragon film? I'm not really sure. And the only reason I can give it a C is because of the original script. I don't think anyone in the film is particularly happy to be there. I don't think anyone in the film is particularly enjoyable. And I would happily never see this film again. And if it wasn't for the fact that it is already within an existing franchise and has stolen its idea, this isn't plagiarism, but let's just refer to it as plagiarism, to be honest. Because you're not doing it as an original and you are just stealing from what you've already done, anyways. And actually, that is a thing in academic circles that you can plagiarize yourself. Even if you're referencing yourself, it's still plagiarism because you haven't referenced it. You've just gone, oh, well, I said this before, so I'll just repeat it and not mention that I had already said it. So, this is terrible. It has no soul. It doesn't look very good. There is no need for a How to Train Your Dragon live action film. And I would be quite happy if there was never a How to Train Your Dragon film again, purely because I just don't want another one of these live action films. But it made like $1 billion, so I definitely will be watching another one of these. But good remedy to that, 28 years later, next on this list. This, to me, may be one of the only films, let's say for now, I think there's probably 2, maybe 3. But this is really S tier to me. And what is really great to me about this film is that it embraces what I would call British humour. It embraces the fact that you're not probably going to understand elements of this. You're not from the UK. The ending, for example, or the significance of some of the environments, what you're seeing. And then the fact that it has subtext of its message. Across the board, great performances. Essentially lit up a future career, if he wants it, of the child actor, Alfie Harrison. It's a film that works in 2 parts to me, where the first part is pure horror film, zombies, they're running, there's a big guy, there's beautiful visuals, and there's like heavy music to convey that this is a dangerous situation. Classic horror movie vibes. And then you get back to the island, and the movie shifts and it changes, and it becomes something else that I won't spoil for those who haven't seen it. But it was so enticing to me that I've seen this film twice. And it's a really effective and emotional message. And it's one that I think for anyone who hasn't seen it, it is worth seeing it because it is something that we are all going to encounter at some point in our lives. And the only thing I could really say bad about this film is that maybe you think the lamentations on motherhood are maybe a bit weird. Maybe it's a bit man writing woman. For me, I still thought those worked because a lot of the motherhood section is specifically a man writing from the perspective of his relationship with his mother. I think this film is brilliant, and to me, it's the best film of the year so far. Don't think it'll finish as the best film of the year for me, but it is a stupendous feat what what Danny Boyle and Alex Garland have achieved with this. F1, very enjoyable film. Had a great time with this. Not sure I understood a lot of what was going on occasion because they were using words, Formula One words that I just didn't understand. Was a bit disappointed that I think the Kerry Condon character just becomes a love interest and nothing else, which I just thought was kind of bland and oddly sexist because you kind of bill her as she's this innovative woman in F1, and then by the end she's just kind of sucking Brad Pitt's dick, which, we all partake in. I'm not saying I wouldn't. Where's the innovative tech that you were speaking of? Where's the innovative tech that she was coming up with? But the race sequences, very effective. Thought they were very fun to watch. A interesting style for filming them, of essentially having this 180 camera stuck to the car. Very interesting that they actually filmed a lot of these, as I understood it, during the Formula One practice sessions. Probably just a bit bland from Brad Pitt, I have to say, but I think everyone else in the film was doing pretty well. Damson Idris, very effective. I love him. I want to see more from him. But this probably for me goes in like a light A. I think it's very good. I think lead performance could be better. The role of the only woman in the film could be better. And it could probably do with a bit more explanation of what was actually going on occasion during the races, because I just was a bit lost. But overall, very fun film, and I can respect that the film just isn't really for me. It's for F1 fans, which is a massive audience, so I can kind of understand why they're not trying to appeal to the most casual audience. And then Jurassic World Rebirth. Disappointing blockbuster. Fun movie. Had some fun with it, just with the visuals. I think Gareth Edwards is probably one of the best working directors in terms of visually selling his films. Script was pointless. I don't think there's very much here in terms of stuff that's well written and enjoyable to watch, but it's also passable. It kind of works. And I thought Scarlett Johansson was actually quite annoying in the film. I was, minor spoilers, I was kind of annoyed that Mahershala Ali makes it out of the film, just because I was like, what's going on here? You've got 3 leads and he's made it out. Why? Jonathan Bailey, I thought, was actually probably the best in the film, and he really sells it. I actually didn't have much of an issue with the family. I just don't think that they do very much. But overall, generally a forgettable film in terms of what is being said. Generally a forgettable film in terms of acting. But the visual aspects I had a lot of fun with. I thought it looks very good. And also what I did appreciate about this film was that it kind of just gets into it pretty quickly, which hasn't happened in the past with these Jurassic World films. So that is a positive. I would put it probably in D. I think I probably had more fun with this than Ballerina. I will probably say that. I think, which might be sacrilege to a lot of people, but I think it's probably true. Superman. I'm very torn on this. I want to put it in S tier because I had so much fun with it and I thought it was excellent. But I think in truth it probably is A tier, but top of that A tier. The parallel universe stuff, I'm just not really sure you need to do. The ending with his parents, I don't think is ever really concluded in a way that I thought was satisfactory. But pretty much everything else, the relationship between the characters, the individual characters, the sort of happy-go-lucky feel of the movie, to me, is very Superman and is very much what this character needed to sort of rejuvenate itself. David Corenswet, to me, just feels undeniably Superman. I do think that one of the significant drawbacks is that James Gunn is in this film setting up a multiverse or a universe, a DC universe. So I don't think that David Corenswet actually gets as much time as I would have liked to really stretch his muscles, both figuratively and literally. And I'm hoping that with Man of Tomorrow being announced for 2027, is it? Yeah, 2027. This film feels more individual and more focused on his character. Whether or not that happens, I'm skeptical. But that is what I want from that film. But for now, this film, I still thought was excellent, and is one that I can't wait to revisit. I haven't done so yet, but I can't wait to. I Know What You Did Last Summer, terrible, unredeemable, one of the worst films of the year. Possibly, is it my worst film of the year? Just looking at this list, possibly. No, I don't think so. I don't think I hate I Know What You Did Last Summer the way I hate Hurry Up Tomorrow. I think that's probably the worst for me. Is it even worth mentioning what's wrong with I Know What You Did Last Summer? Terrible acting, terrible returning performances from Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. Terrible new performances from the likes of, who is it, Havana Rose Liu? No, I believe it's the other girl. I don't know. And Madeline Klein. Not memorable. Also, one of the worst experiences I've ever had in a cinema. And just across the board, forgettable entirely. And I can't wait to not think about it any longer. Although I probably will have to watch it again if I end up doing a worst of the year. Then, what I think is probably my other S tier film, Eddington. This film really is fucking excellent. I think if I end up watching this again, it could probably end up being my film of the year. That is before other things have obviously been released, such as Sentimental Value. But this film, to me, really picks up on a lot of the things that my generation are dealing with, and yet never feels condescending in the way that a film from a millennial director could feel. It never offers a solution, in my opinion, because it doesn't, in my opinion, believe that the solution is out there. But it attempts to just draw your ire to as many of the issues that happened during COVID as it possibly can. And essentially, propagates this idea that if you don't get a grasp on at least one of these issues, this is probably the result, or has already been the result. If you were looking for criticisms of the film, maybe it runs a bit too long, which I do think it does. I don't think the final 5-10 minutes is really necessary. You can kind of end it in the big shootout scene, which I thought was excellent. And again, has this sort of breathing scene that Ari Aster made use of in Midsommar as well, which I think are in both films just oddly terrifying. And this isn't a horror movie, but it was still terrifying. And then Fantastic Four, First Steps. Listen, I'm probably going to upset a lot of people with this, but this film really isn't it. I don't like Pedro Pascal. He doesn't have the charm or the arrogance of a Reed Richards. He also doesn't have the chemistry with any of the other cast. Oddly enough, with Vanessa Kirby, who I thought were practically in love with each other, which it's so fucking odd that now on screen they just can't seem to act opposite each other without looking like they just haven't seen each other ever. It takes away a lot of the humanity of Ben. It eliminates the room for character development for the Human Torch by saying it's just not going to be the original character and just making him the perfect sort of pin-up boy for the 50s. The relationship between Sue Storm and Reed Richards just feels incredibly bland and not real. The use of Dr. Doom at the end, in the end credit scene, which isn't a spoiler because we all knew it was going to be that, so shut up. It just feels pointed that that character is probably going to have his mask off for the significant portion of both of the new Avengers films, which is worrying because that's not what Doctor Doom is. The most alluring part of this film is the historical sort of futurism, which I don't ever think is really used to its benefit other than the opening sequence. Overall, I just thought was pretty pointless and boring. Maybe, I'll give it a low C, I guess, but I just really just don't take very much from this film. And also how they defeat what is apparently one of the most powerful beings in all of Marvel is to just push him into a pole, which is the equivalent of bullying the smaller kid at school, and you just kind of kick him in the chest and throw him to the ground, which is that's fucked up and you shouldn't do that. But also it's not drowning him in the toilet or something like that. It's just sort of all right, yeah, together, also one of the worst films I've seen this year. I sound very negative, but then when you actually look at my everyone always calls me negative, but then when you look at my list, like look at how many films I've been really positive about this year. I've reviewed a lot of these films, and I think I've been very positive about a lot of these films. And a couple of these films that's still on the list, I am going to be positive about. But Together is terrible. Both terrible performances. Both act like they've never met each other. Both over the top. Both don't fit with this art house horror vibe. The film also doesn't fit with an art house horror vibe because the writing isn't smart enough to really have subtext or to really be pointed at its issue but feel real. It's stuck in horror movie tropes that feel like they're from the 80s and 90s, and yet it wants to be perceived as smart and pretentious. There is also the issue of the lawsuit hanging in the background over this film, although you can't really judge the film for that because we haven't seen that film because it was never distributed. But overall, just unsatisfactory film in a year of highly good horror films. This is one of the worst of the year, and I don't really think there's anything redeeming about it. The ending is just like whatever, because it doesn't really offer a route out of what appears to be a toxic relationship. So I will put this in like a low E, but you know, where does it probably goes here. I still didn't hate it as much as Hurry Up Tomorrow, but Jesus Christ, it's not good. The Naked Gun, brilliant film. Really great performances from Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson. Joke every minute, joke every 30 seconds. Not sure that all the jokes work as much as everyone else seems to think they work, but it's still pretty good. Had a great time. I would put this in A. It's like a low A. Maybe it's a B, actually. Because I think towards the final 20-25 minutes of the film, it kind of tapers off, and I don't think it's as funny for those 20-25 minutes as possibly the first hour. I think for the first hour, I was into it completely. And then by the end of it, I was kind of like, all right, it's only an hour and 25 minutes, but I just don't know if it's as funny as it was at first. So I would put this in actually probably high B. Let's put it beneath Final Destinations, but still very good. And then we have Weapons, which I love. I think Weapons is brilliant. But I'm not sure where this goes, really. I think when you speak literally, it's probably better than Superman, so it should go above Superman. I think I probably enjoyed Superman maybe a bit more, but on reflection, maybe a second time of viewing it, I won't enjoy it as much. But then when you really look at all the elements and like question whether or not everything works, it probably deserves to go in S tier. I've already seen this film twice, is what I will say. And I've only seen, I think, 2 of these films twice already. So by proxy, it feels like it should go in S tier. But it's definitely, I would say, in my opinion, a ways off the other 2 S tiers, but it feels higher than Superman. I love everything about this film. I think it is a great film. I think there's a lot of subtext in this film that I haven't really sort of delved into, even on 2 viewings. I also think there's a lot of Fincher in this, because it feels very professional and efficient, and you can hear clips of Zach Cregger talking about how he cut things for time and efficiency, and he wanted it to be cutthroat, he wanted it to be bare bones and down to what is the most important things. Julia Garner, brilliant in this film. Josh Brolin, one of my favourite actors ever, great in this film. Kid, great in this film. Amy Madigan, great in this film. Alden Ehrenreich, great in this film. Austin Abrams, probably actually one of my performances of this year. One of my favourite performances of this year. I think he's surprisingly fun. I hadn't really watched anything of him before. It looks like we're going to get at least one more from him with Zach Cregger in the Resident Evil movie. It is a film that I would want more from studios, which is that it has subtext. It doesn't tell you directly what the film is really about, but you can kind of work it out from the information you've been given. You've been given enough to work it out. It's just about whether or not you can be bothered. And I have my own theories, which I won't discuss here because that's not what this video is about. But yes, S tier, great film, loved it. Next, The Thursday Murder Club. Now, I think more than most people, I was positive about this film But that's not because I think it's a great film. I think that's because if you analyze it for what it is, and you think about who it's aimed at, it does work. It accepts that it's a Netflix crime caper that is appealing to older generations. Let's say 45 and above. That's who it's appealing to. And it works because it sort of has limitations on getting old and getting lonely. And what do you do if you don't have someone to grow old with? You sort of create this sort of club thing where you do things with people your age. And I don't think it looks very good. I don't think a lot of the performances are necessarily great. I thought David Tennant in particular was very annoying, and I was happy when he died. There are other performances that I thought was alright. Taylor Imrie, Pierce Brosnan. I thought Ben Kingsley was alright. I can't say I hated it because I didn't really, but there are eye roll moments. There are a lot of moments where I was like, this is bland. So I would put it in sort of a D sort of sphere. But this sort of like level, to me, I kind of hate all of these just pretty much equally, where it's like I don't really hate any of them. I just don't think they're very enjoyable films, pretty much for me. They've got elements that are enjoyable, but that's kind of it. But then finally, film that I enjoyed thoroughly, and I know exactly where it's going, and it's going in B, above The Naked Gun. The Roses, starring Olivia Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch as a couple who are starting out their relationship and then moving through it, and are then getting a divorce, ultimately. This to me is a film that will struggle, or has struggled, I think somewhat, at the overseas market, because it is a film that is uniquely baked into British humour and that sort of dry, sarcastic nature, where you have to really understand what it is about British humour that digs deep. It's a film that I can't see Americans necessarily loving, but in my opinion, it works a lot better than the sort of black comedy that is The War of the Roses, which it's based on, or it's a reimagining of, let's call it. But I think it's a great film. I think it's very fun. I think it's got 3 performances in particular that I think are great and work off each other very well. I think Cumberbatch and Coleman being that dry British humour works very well, and then having Kate McKinnon in there to offer that sort of slapstick, over-the-top American humour works very well. This is kind of what I want to see more of from Hollywood comedy films. And let's just say both of these, The Naked Gun and The Roses. I didn't love The Naked Gun as much as I loved The Roses, or at least had a good time with The Roses. I want more of this, of just, this is a pure comedy. It's nothing else. It has a bit of subtext, got maybe a underlying message that is there, but it's not the deepest thing in the world. Comedy is just kind of dead in this sphere. It exists on Netflix, but nowhere else. And even on Netflix, I don't think it's very good at all. And I want more of these kind of films of, we are a pure Hollywood blockbuster comedy. It's made cheaply, but we know you love it, and we're just trying to make you laugh. And there isn't enough of that. And with both of these films, I had a great time. I think you could actually argue, now that I'm looking at this list, that maybe I would put Friendship in this like sort of sphere. Not necessarily in any order, but like I think these 3 are probably about equal in terms of how much I like them. I think Friendship is probably technically a better film. It's more efficient. It's more astute at what it's doing. It knows what its message is. I don't think it's as funny as the other 2. I don't think its ending is as good as either of the other 2. All 3, I want all 3 of these kind of comedies. Slapstick, over the top, dry British humour. And then the uncomfortable comedy that is Tim Robinson. But overall, looking at this list, I think it's been a good year so far. But what we are lacking is those sort of killer films that typically come at the end of the year or the start of the year. And it seems like this year is sort of end-loaded with those heavy hitters. So, your Surats, your Hamnets, Sentimental Value, Die My Love, It Was Just an Accident, The Secret Agent, so on and so forth. There's plenty of these films that are coming out that feel like heavy hitters in terms of that pretentious art house drama sort of sphere. And I love that sphere. But so far, Look kind of like this B, what I would consider B movie section. The Naked Gun, The Roses, and Final Destination. It's been a pretty good year. And then there's also been, let's say, 2 blockbusters that should have been big in F1 and Superman that have hit very well. There's been a few sleeper hits, I would say. 28 Days Later, Final Destination Bloodlines, Weapons, now The Conjuring. And the misses to me, whilst I would say there's 4 big misses, there's also 6 there that I can at least sort of be like, this is fine. It's passable. It's not terrible. And then there are those where I'm like, I don't like this, but I like elements of it. So overall, other than 4 films, I would say that I can find something that I've enjoyed in pretty much all of these. And even with Karate Kid Legends, I at least appreciated the aesthetic of the first 20 minutes. Other than that, I thought it was terrible. Up to now, I would say I'm pretty happy with where we are. I'm just now wondering what's going to be at the Oscars, because I don't think we've got a lot for that Oscars race. It does make me think that maybe the Oscars race is going to be a bit thin, is what I would say. Because I already don't think that films like Weapons and 28 Years Later are going to make it, because those kind of films don't usually make it. Those horror films, I'm saying. But thank you for watching.